Time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and this is the Or Dynasty podcast. Tonight, we tackle rookie tight end prospects. Joining me is my co-host, and let's be honest, the brains behind this operation. He may look like a Viking, but he is not. You can find him on Twitter at JoeLow63, the Joseph Harlow.
What a beautiful intro. Thank you, JJ.
You are welcome.
Kind. You have a wonderful brain as well.
Thank you. Well, next up, once can be dismissed, twice might be a coincidence. 3 weeks in a row might form a pattern. You can find him on the Twitter machine, as he likes to say, at Jameson Rules with a Z. Jameson Hutchinson. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. I appreciate you having me back. Third time's a charm. I don't know what else to say at this point, but I appreciate you guys having me on. Got some fun tight ends to talk about, so I'm ready to jump in, and I'm actually excited about it. I think we got some prospects here.
Yeah,
we definitely have a few prospects. And speaking of good prospects, our comprehensive, one-of-a-kind 2024 IDP Plus Rookie Guide is here. Get the IDP Plus Rookie Draft Guide right now for $9.99 for a limited time, and get updates every Friday as the NFL draws nigh. Check out the link in the show description and download your copy today. Gentlemen, we're going to hit on them right now. So let's start. We're going to hit the tight ends pretty much in the order that Joe has them ranked. Might as well start with the man, the myth, the legend. We've been hearing about him for years. Brock Bowers.
One of the best tight end prospects, I'd say, probably coming out of college ever. Not a whole lot, but not everybody else has already, glowed about on the Twitter machine. But Brock Bowers, 6'4", a whopping 240 pounds, 56 receptions last year for 714 yards and 6 touchdowns. The leading receiver for both Georgia Bulldog national championship teams. Does a little bit of everything, and he does it all at an elite level. One of the elite athletes in the entire NFL draft. He's really good as a pass catcher and a blocker. He's very aggressive as a receiver. He's great at contested catches, and he's one of the Yak Kings, one of the best yards after catch prospects that we have. Very similar, if I can compare him to anybody. If George Kittle ran more routes instead of blocking, it's just him. I mean, he is unbelievable as a prospect. He's just a badass mother trucker. I'll just put it that way.
Watch your mouth. But I was talking about Brock. That's a Shaft reference. Oh God, you guys are so young. Joe, do you want to say anything?
I have one disagreement with what you said, Jameson.
Oh.
In my time doing it, Brock Bowers is the best tight end prospect to come out. And one note here, as it happens every year, we're seeing with Caleb Williams, with Drake May, with Marvin Harrison Jr., people are getting bored. He's getting knocked a little bit around the Twitter sphere because, people are bored. He's been great for 3 years. The 22.2% contested catch rate this year, it's lower, but if you look at the previous 2 years, and if you check out our fancy graphic, if you're watching on YouTube, stats courtesy of PFF, you see it was super high numbers the previous 2 years. Honestly, I do think it's one of those, that and a almost 5% drop rate this year. New quarterback, less, what's the word? Them being in sync, I guess.
Chemistry.
There you go.
Thank you. But less chemistry between them overall. And I think it's a lot of those that, he had some drops like Marvin Harrison. Are they really drops? Or are they, holy crap, how'd you get close to that? Same with the contested catch ones. I'm not really worried about it. He was injured this year, which is the concern for a smaller tight end. But I heard a comparison today that I thought was crazy. It makes a lot of sense. But Cooper Kupp, similar type of athlete. Bowers is a lot bigger, but used in a lot of fly sweeps, slot motion, just a lot of usage similarities, which is like, that's interesting. I think Bowers he's a tight end compared to a receiver, but I thought that was very interesting. Just wanted to bring that up.
Now, Jameson, this might be a harder question for Brock Bowers, but if he busts, what will be the reason?
Injuries? as a tight end.
Oh.
Other than that, I mean, it's really not a whole lot of holes that you can pick at his game. I mean, injuries, we know these tight ends, they're, big specimens, but at the same time, they're taking some pretty big shots. So, other than that, I want to talk what Joe was talking about with the pro day, where we get really bored with these prospects and we start nitpicking. And we know that he's going to have his own pro day, same as Marvin Harrison. I mean, Marvin Harrison doesn't need to test in front of anybody. Everybody knows what he is. Everybody knows what he does. He's one of the best. We don't need to nitpick and start doing this stuff. As far as the NFL draft goes, I think Brock Bowers is more of a luxury pick for a team that, has most of their bases covered. If they're, it's kind of like with Detroit last year with Jahmyr Gibbs. They did that because most of the holes on the rest of the team were already taken care of. So, a lot of interesting landing spots. I think Cincinnati, honestly, would be a lot of fun. They need a tight end. I know they just got Mike Gesicki, but adding
They
another,
need a tight end.
well, you know what I mean. No, last podcast I talked about plowing. Now we're doing this, so I need to give it up at this point. But another team I talked about, the Colts, another receiving option for Anthony Richardson. I think that'd be a really fun landing spot. Him, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs underneath. I really like Brock Bowers. There's not a whole lot to pick, as far as his game goes, and
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a difference maker. He's George Kittle to me. There's not much difference to him. And if George Kittle wasn't in San Francisco blocking all the time, he would be the alpha number one tight end, outside of injuries. It'd be that easy.
Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock that he said he was going to go a little crazy on. They had him going to the Jets at 10. So interesting to be a solid weapon.
Be fun. Him and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, a little Mike Williams if he can stay healthy. Breece Hall coming out of the backfield. I would like that. Unfortunately,
like I said, he's a
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, well, we'll just ignore that one. But he's a luxury pick. I can kind of see him going a little later in the NFL draft, just because a lot of these needs get pushed up before luxury picks like tight ends. But like I said, he's just about as perfect of a prospect as you can get.
Well, that is phenomenal. I like what Joe wrote on his tier breakdown for tight ends. He made the note that after Brock Bowers, we go about 6 tiers down to the next guy, Joe, Ja'Tavion Sanders.
Yeah, and this is not slander on Sanders and the next name. This is just Brock Bowers. He's incredible. Top 4 player on my board overall. Lock and load. JT Sanders for Texas, team that has 4 potential top 2 of their position players, 3 if we're talking wide receivers, since there's great receivers. Not the point now, but a bunch of great receiving targets and running targets. Sanders this year, great athlete. The 40 wasn't ideal, but the other metrics were really good. Overall, feel very good about him. He's very David Njoku to me, except I think he's actually showed out as a blocker. Doing some extra film work earlier this week, and yeah, he actually is a decent blocker. He's not a George Kittle of a blocker, but solid, and at least showed the willingness to do so, which will help keep him on the field, keep him able to be an inline or slot sort of tight end. So that is always helpful. The more you're on the field, the more chance you get for targets. That's all we can ask for a tight end. See his average depth of target jump this year from 8.2 to 9.8. Love to see that. And contested catches, he's over 50%. Really good after the catch with the ball in his hands. I think he's a really good tight end. And if he should go in the second round of that NFL draft, and I think he's up there with last year's crop of second rounders. Now probably won't put up the Sam Laporta season, but I think similar talent level.
Jameson, Ja'Tavion.
Yeah, I like him a lot. And we talk about going down the tiers. I think the next couple guys, we've got a lot of receiving assets as far as tight ends goes, and he's like a big slot. That's exactly what I think he ends up being. Yards after the catch, he does really well. He's improving on his blocking. But like I said, I think if you get into, say Miami, Gesicki's gone. I think it'd be a great landing spot for him because, Mike McDaniel will kind of scheme him up, put him in some creative, plays where he can get into space and do his thing. But he's a really fun prospect, and I just think he's a big slot for one of these NFL teams.
Yeah,
There was a
Miami
report
could
out of
use some
Texas
size.
Pro Day that Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, their GM, I believe, are doing a lot of work on him. So that could be exciting in the second round.
Very good, gentlemen. Well, I'm going to start talking about our next tight end, and he might be my favorite. Not necessarily, I'm not saying he's my number one tight end, but I don't know. I kind of like this guy.
He's good.
As I mentioned earlier, like I'm old. I like tight ends who line up in line and can block, and they have some receiving chops. Theo Johnson is 6'6", 259 pounds, which is amazing size for his position. He posted a 4.57 40, a nearly 40-inch vertical, and a 10.5 broad, all explosive numbers. NFL.com ranked him as their third most athletic tight end. However, Kent Platt and his RAS scored him a perfect 10 out of 10. He is the most athletic tight end based on his size since 1987. They've evaluated 1,105 tight ends in that time, and he ranked number one. All of his measurables are amazing. Now, I know his college production was terrible. Left a lot to be desired. But the problem is that he went to Penn State. And I'm sorry, fellow Pennsylvanians. Like, I don't mean to insult you, but their offense is terrible. They never have a good QB. So I'm not surprised he didn't put up numbers, because who can in that system? I believe he's actually going to be a better player. And I know that was a thing on Twitter, like in the NFL than he was in college. But I think it's true for him. In a regular rookie draft, I'm going to start looking at him in the early to late third round. That's, he's not an elite talent. There's a ton of wide receivers, and I might take a couple of the running backs we talked about last week before him. But in tight end premium, I don't know. I have a good feeling about Theo Johnson, which probably means I'm going to be dead wrong. I'm hoping he ends up back on the Jets. I don't know why I said back on the Jets. Not like he was on the Jets to begin with, but I don't know. It kind of made me feel good. I don't know. Anybody have anything to say about Theo Johnson?
Yeah, I like Theo a lot. I think limited after the catch, but I think strong blocker, at least, and a lot of developmental talent there. Like you said with the Penn State thing, their offense is so frustrating. And even when they do have a talented quarterback like Drew Aller, they just kind of waste him and sit him behind Sean Clifford for some reason. But we saw it with Chris Godwin, with even Mike Gesicki, who we mentioned earlier, and Jahan Dotson. They were all decent players in college, but then got to the NFL and did significantly better because they were held back. Theo Johnson, I think, is just the next one. I would love to see him in Los Angeles with the Chargers, just in that Greg Roman heavy tight end set offense. I think he could be a really dangerous threat out of an offense like that.
I would like that.
He's very versatile. He can be an inline or on the move tight end, so he can do both things well. I really like the Football Guys rookie guide. They've got his comparison to Cole Kmet, and I think that actually translates really well with him. So
guess who else does?
Would that be you?
That would be me, though I think he's a little more athletic, but yes.
Yeah. But these tight ends, I mean, if you want to talk fantasy-wise, a lot of these tight ends that we're going to be going over are going to be fantasy relevant. And I think Theo's going to be one of them. He's a very fun prospect, and I know that Brock Bowers is above and beyond and all that stuff. But when you go down to the second tier, I think the second tier is not quite the first, but I think it's going a little under the radar.
I would have to agree. I think JT and Theo are both solid prospects. And if they weren't sitting in the shadow of Brock Bowers, they'd be getting a lot more love. Now, Joe, you also made the note again in your rankings that now there's another 6-tier drop, right? To the next tight ends. So, Jameson, why don't you kick us off with the number 4 tight end, Cade Stover?
Yep. Big guy out of Ohio State, 6'4", 247, ran a 4.65 40-yard dash. And then, at Ohio State last year, 41 receptions, 576 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Did a little bit of everything in high school. He played safety and running back before going to college, where he ended up being an outside linebacker, converted into a tight end. So, I mean, he has been a little bit of everything. And then he's a great athlete. We hear it all the time in the NFL. He's a former basketball star. So, Antonio Gates comes to mind as these basketball stars that convert into these monstrous tight ends.
Jimmy
But like
Graham.
Jimmy Graham, another one. The list goes on and on. He's known more for his receiving than his blocking, which seems to kind of be a theme with all these guys, which is a little different from the norm. But he's not as fast. He's not going to burn you, but he has strong hands and he really works the middle of the field well. But he's great at breaking tackles as well. And I think he's a great tight end too for a team.
All right. Next up is Ben Sinnot.
Yeah, and this is a little different of a player. He's more of your fullback, tight end hybrid, sort of F role, but I think he's interesting. I have him compared to Harrison Bryant, which doesn't spark joy for fantasy, but that's a damn good football player. And one, I do think he has a lot more juice than Bryant. I do think he has more athletic, better receiving talents. So I think just a good baseline. He's someone who can play in the slot, in line, in that fullback role. Very versatile, which will get him on the field. He's a tough player, a good blocker, unlike a lot of these other guys. Really, a lot of these guys are receiving threats, but even if they're not great blockers, they try, which you don't say with every tight end class. Like last year's tight end class, you're not going to catch Sam Laporta trying to block very often. And even he did turn that around, though, towards the middle of the year. But
how can you not with Dan Campbell as your coach?
Right. Like having that baseline already, that's going to keep you on the field if you are athletic, talented, and versatile. It's just going to keep you there. Good player. I think, tight end 2, really a tight end 1.5 in a couple of years for him and Stover, I think. Don't see them being a tight end 1 consistently, but could be a really good team tight end 2 and maybe sneak into a fantasy 10 to 18 range, hopefully.
Yeah, he would definitely be a stash for me in like a tight end premium dynasty league,
Absolutely.
like somebody who I add. I actually have him higher than Stover. I think he's a little bit closer to like that Theo Johnson.
Okay.
But I mean, they're all kind of the same at this point.
I like both a lot.
Yeah. And I would be thrilled to have either of them on my team. Just like we are thrilled. You like that? That was pretty good. We are thrilled to announce our new partnership with your one-stop shop for the best prices in the travel world, Expedia. Check out the link in the show description and head over to Expedia.com. Their spring sale can net you up to 25% off select hotels if you book by March 25th. And of course, they always find the best deals for you so you can just enjoy the ride. Check out the link in the show description and get your next adventure planned today. Well, gentlemen, the next few tight ends are going to be our adventure. So let's kick it off, Jameson, with Jared Wiley.
Yep. Big boy out of TCU, 6'6", 249 pounds, ran a 4.62 40-yard dash. Last year, 47 receptions for 520 yards and 8 touchdowns. Another one of these, receiving tight ends. So started his career at Texas for 3 years before transferring to TCU. As far as he does a little bit of everything, he's really good as a receiver, but he's also a good blocker. He's got a huge wingspan. So as far as the catch radius and all that stuff, he's not really flashy or creative. He's kind of one of the retro tight ends where they just kind of catch the ball and, they're not going to beat you in space, but, they can run through you and all that stuff. But he's most likely an inline tight end at the NFL level. But as far as one of these deeper stashes, as far as at least in Dynasty and stuff, it's another receiving tight end that I think has a lot of upside and a very low cost.
Now, and again, I'm not putting words into your mouth, Jameson, but speaking like we did about Sinnot, when we say like a late round pick, we're talking about deep roster dynasty leagues, right? Like I'm not talking about a 20-man roster.
No.
I'm talking like 35, right? Like right around 30, 35, where you can stash a couple players. Maybe you have a taxi squad where you don't need to like play them or have them sucking up roster space that you need. But
Yep.
those are the kind of like prospects, especially in tight end premium, that you throw back there right at that bottom end and you let them marinate for a year or two. If they don't turn into anything, you cut them. If they do, it's like found money, right?
Yep.
It's like putting on
Absolutely.
an old sports coat that you have $20 in the pocket. It's always a good little thing that could happen. Joe, why don't you handle our next tight end, Jaheim Bell?
A very interesting player here. He is the 6'3", 240. Definitely was bigger than I expected. He seems like a smaller player on film, but very similar size to Brock Bowers. But he is very much in that H-back molds where not really a tight end, not a fullback, not a slot receiver. It's kind of the Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith mold, really. I don't think he's quite Jonnu Smith in terms of just Jonnu was a lot bigger, but I think relative athletic score from Kent Lee Platt, 8.44, really good number, 4.6, 140, good agility numbers. And yeah, I think he's really good athlete, really good with the ball in his hands. Really, probably outside of Bowers, might be the best one with the ball in his hands, I would say, in this class. But he got a lot of screen passes and played outside a lot. It's going to be hard for him because he will need to be used more in a gadget sort of role, but I think he also can thrive there. This past season, he was used in the slot 41% of the time. I was out wide almost 13% of the time, which for a tight end is a big number, but was only in line 37% of the time. So he's not a traditional player, so it's going to take going to a really smart offensive mind to really get some fantasy usage out of him, which is why he's much lower on this list, because he is going to need a good landing spot and manufactured touches.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, it is that time for the best of the rest. I want you to give me your prognosis on these 5 tight ends in 10 words or less. Joseph, 10 words or less. No cheating this time. All right, let's kick off with Joe. You have Dallin Holker.
First, got to say, it sucks to be a CSU Ram. There's the Wyoming rivalry out of the way. Slot tight end, surprisingly good athlete with the ball in his hands.
Jameson?
Just an undersized receiving weapon who doesn't excel at blocking.
Oh, good job. You both follow the directions. Tip. Jameson, you can take Tip.
So just a Y tight end blocker. That's about as simple as it gets.
Joseph?
Ditto. Good athlete, though.
All right. Joe, take Tanner McLachlan.
Really good athlete. Most potential of this group as a receiver. And lowest floor.
I believe that was 11 words. You failed. Jameson?
Lacks size, but has good flash as a yak tight end.
Nice. I would actually like to see a yak as a tight end. Jameson, Erick All.
A versatile tight end who can produce at the NFL level.
Joe?
Taking the words right out of my mouth.
AJ
Iowa,
Barner,
Michigan
Joe.
tight end.
Okay.
Another, yeah. All started at Michigan. Lost the job to Barner. So, yeah, Barner, good tight end, some upside. All-around player, I think.
Jameson?
It's a developmental tight end who could produce as a receiver.
I love it. Anybody we missed? Brevin Spanford, 6'7". I think the biggest of the tight ends.
That's a name. There's a couple other names. There's the South Carolina tight end, Trey Knox. Double check that I have that name right.
I'm pretty sure that's like a Madden, like year 20 franchise generated name.
Yeah, Trey Knox. Brant Kuthi from Utah, who started over Dalton Kincaid going into last season as well. Devin Culp ran a really fast 40 out of Washington, but I don't think he's much. I think that's really it.
Jameson, anybody tickle your fancy?
Not to that extent, but Zach Hines, he's kind of interesting.
Yes.
One of the Jackrabbits, but outside of that, nobody tickling my fancy in that sort of way. So just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Well,
one thing I will say is
yes.
there is potential for especially Jared Wiley, to go in the second round of the NFL draft. There have been some murmurs there. Dane Brugler and Daniel Jeremiah have brought it up. They're like the top draft gurus out there. Said that Brugler said that he wouldn't be surprised if, like, surprised but not shocked if Wiley went tight end 2, even before Sanders and Theo, which not likely, but it's possible. And last year we saw 5 tight ends go round 2, including a couple who were typically at 4th, 5th round grades. So once Sanders and Johnson go, we could see a run. And if that happens, then these guys do get pushed up the board a little bit.
Well, pay attention to landing spots. It's vital. And what you need to pay attention to is IDP Plus. We're not just pretty faces here. We have an entire suite of tools, 2 of which are right up at the top here, and rankings for both offense and defense. Plus, you have rookie rankings, injury trackers, snap tools, premium articles, and more. And our Discord. It doesn't even talk about our Discord. Our Discord is fantastic. So right now, you get your first month free for just $1 with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. Head over to idpguys.org right after we finish. Get ahead of your lazy league mates and start your march towards fantasy football greatness today with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. The link and details are in the show description. Gentlemen, it is time for tags, where we can share any final thoughts we might have and let everybody know where they can find us. Jameson?
Well, once again, 3rd time's a charm. I appreciate both of you having me on. I'm on the Twitter machine, as always, at Jameson Rules, somewhere over here. There we go. But other than that, we're just grinding these prospects away until the draft here in a couple weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. Like JJ said, IDP Plus, go check out all the good stuff over there. And other than that, I think that's about it. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks for coming, buddy. Joe?
Yeah, thanks again for joining us, Jameson. 3 in a row. It's been a blast. You can find me on Twitter at JoLo63. You can also find me at IDP Plus, where I do the mailbag show with Justin Fry every Tuesday at 2 Eastern, 1 Central. And ask away questions, mailbag at idpplus.org. And yeah, or just drop in the show. Shoot us a DM with questions.
Absolutely. It's a great show. I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Thank you to Joe and Jameson for all their work on this episode. They really put in all the effort. Oh, it's always my pleasure. Thank you to IDP Plus, the family, for all the support. And as always, Gary and Foxworth for doing all the behind the scenes stuff for us. We thank you. You help us so much. And from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and remember, never say anything to make a meeting longer or cut a happy hour short. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.